Hello Riders and Rangers, welcome to How to Fix Operation Overdrive, the finale, Part 5, Once a Ranger. The previous parts are about the pilot arc, heroes, villains, and veteran rangers. Ready? Overdrive, accelerate. Things not said. Close to the finale of the season, when most of the cry rolls across the world has been processed, Molten challenges the Rangers at the DER storage center as Meritrix watches the battle overhead. Molten takes down the 6 Rangers with Mr. Hartford as a Sentinel Knight standing. After a tough fight, Mr. Hartford finally took down Molten. When held at mercy, Molten asks if Mr. Hartford is going to destroy Molten the way the power crystals disfigured him. This somehow shocked Mr. Hartford, and Molten retreated immediately after saying, "Wait till you see what Mother is now." The other Rangers were confused. As the Rangers recovered, they tried to see what happened with the DER storage center. There was this virus planted there by Meritrix. Will quickly starts up an antivirus program to clear the problem, but Mac starts repeating himself. Later, Mac woke up with his head disassembled from his body. It was revealed that Mac was a robot. Back in the early days of Mr. Hartford being part of the DER, during Mr. Hartford's being the scavenger team, he found a destroyed cyclobot that was exposed to the remnant energies of Wild Force. When Mr. Hartford was in contact with the cyclobot, it created living skin over it which resembles Mr. Hartford's his 20-year-old self. Mr. Hartford took the cyclobot back to the base and downloaded his memories into it, using the same technology he used to download information to the Rangers for them to fight and use Zords later. Since the data download isn't fully operational, its memories were slightly altered, making the cyclobot think he is Mac, Mr. Hartford's son. Thus, Mr. Hartford decides to raise his cyclobot as his own, Mac. Mr. Hartford wishes to have his second life, or son, Mac, to actually do more for the world than self-indulgence for the taste of adventure. Mac was upset about this reveal, seeing himself as nothing but a machine and a replacement. The other Rangers are still openly accepting Mac's secret. Mac is angry at his father for hiding the secret from him. For the rest of the season, Mac has been cold to Mr. Hartford. Goodbye, Norg the Yeti. Now we reach the Once a Ranger arc, which begins off in Flurious' hideout. As the rumors spread on how weak Flurious is as she is having certain memories of her previous life, the Fear Cats return to properly challenge her again. Due to her strength has decreased by a lot after the events of losing the Sentinel Sword, she was no match against them. Before they could destroy Flurious, Norg the Yeti comes to her defense. Surprisingly, Norg takes out the Fear Cats and unleashes his mind control spell onto the Fear Cats. Claiming he was the one who gave them the powers, he can also be the one who takes them back. And Norg the Yeti turns out to be just a fake alias. He is revealed to be Thrax in disguise. Again, I would like to use another design for Thrax. Since his powers are from the Thunder Megazord, we will be using the design of Iron-Faced Churio, a Die Ranger villain where the Thunder Megazord is modeled after. Thrax then gathered the Fear Cats, Molten, Flurious, Camdor, and Meritrix to form an alliance to defeat the Overdrive Rangers and join his cause. As a reward, he will give them the security codes to open up the DER energy reserves and deposits. Then, they can take it to the stars and start their conquest together. In a flashback, Thrax reveals when Mr. Hartford found the Thunderzord Thunder Saber Jewel, he went there to inspect it. But when the Thunderzords were destroyed by Evil Rito, the evil powers corrupted the Thunderzord powers. When he was in contact with it, it made him immune to the Z-Wave of goodness. Thrax also revealed he has infiltrated into the Operation Overdrive and has been watching them over. The avatar skin has been Thrax all along. If you have noticed, skin has the same color scheme as Lord Zed, silver and maroon. Thrax has hijacked DER for a long period of time. He has been playing both sides of the Overdrive and villain faction ever since the start of the season, making all of them collect the Morphin Grid Residue's energies for him. Thrax's ultimate goal is to become the new Dark Spectre and the ultimate face of a good mentor. He'll be playing both sides of good and evil, he'll provide weapons to both sides, escalating the Ranger powers, and allow the evil parts of the galaxy purchase his weaponry, submit to him as the final line of defense against the Rangers. The other villains are interested in becoming part of this. Flurious can become the crime lord of the galaxy. Meritrix and Camdor can become the weapons dealer of the galactic underworld. Molten and the Fear Cats can start their conquest and threaten the galaxy any way they see fit. Thrax will continue playing as the overseer of the DER to act as the good guy while doping the rest of the galaxy. Thrax then launches an attack at the Overdrive Tower, which is the source of the Rangers' powers. Mr. Hartford, being disheartened by his son's revelation, emotionally was not fit to participate in the battle. The Overdrive Rangers arrived to fight the villains. The Overdrive Rangers and the villain factions of the season were tied, but the heroes' defenses were down. The rising Warlord heads into Frontline. When Thrax entered, he aimed at the tower and absorbed the energies of the Morphin Grid, disabling all the Rangers' morph, except the Mercury Ranger and the Sentinel Knight. Because the Mercury Ranger's powers are derived from Tyzon himself, he jumps in with the Sentinel Sword and challenges Thrax. Thrax cleans the floor with Tyzon, tossing him around while absorbing his chiral energy. When Thrax was about to destroy Tyzon, Mr. Hartford activates into Sentinel Knight mode. He pushes Tyzon out of the way. The two titans are equally matched. Thrax then asks, how does it feel that he has been used to being the running dog to collect residue energy for him? All that hard work is actually collected for evil? Mr. Hartford, with the Sentinel Knight powers, continues head-on, taking the upper hand in the fight. Then Thrax toys with Mr. Hartford's emotions about how both his son hates him, the duplicate and the real one. Mr. Hartford was caught off guard when Thrax said, "Your real boy, not that robot toy, is alive, fool." With Mr. Hartford lowering his defenses, Thrax knocked him out of Sentinel Knight mode, about to destroy him. Mac jumps in and tries to stop Thrax. Even though Mr. Hartford was out of the way, Thrax blasts an energy beam on Mac. Mac was knocked into Moltor. Somehow, Moltor absorbed Mac back into his monstrous body. Using the time Mac has bought them, Spencer was about to remotely use the Zords to rescue despite how little energy there is left. Thrax and his minions then gleefully left, except Moltor, who reluctantly followed, to attack the other warehouses. Regrouping all the Rangers, Mr. Hartford was in full distress after realizing Mac's demise. Mac's sacrifice symbolizes Mr. Hartford needs to grow up, and it is the death of his innocence. His black canary is gone. He understands if the Rangers would like to leave, saying it's just a job. However, Overdrive Rangers refuse to leave. Will said Mac says he already felt like quitting once at the beginning, but when Mac almost resigned, he felt like something was completely wrong. It's something he has to do. The other Rangers agree with the sentiment, but Rose finally asks if Mr. Hartford is going to find his real son and what Thrax was saying is real. Mr. Hartford is also emotionally struggling, since he has pieced together that his son was right in front of him the entire time. Mr. Hartford hesitates, but finally plucks up his courage to find his son and face his past. The other Rangers want to come with him, but Mr. Hartford says he has to do this alone. Molten of Fact. Arriving at Moltor's volcano lair, Mr. Hartford confronts Moltor, demanding why would his own son choose to become a monster. Moltor said when he was in contact with the power crystals, it transformed him into a monster, and somehow that moment in time had stopped for him. Even though it may have been just a split second, his mentality grew. He had learned so much about the Morphin Grid, the battle between Zordon and Lord Zed, and Ranger history. Moltor realized that, in order for the Morphin Grid to exist, there has to be a balance between good and evil. Within a blink of a second, his mind grew over 10 millennia. The more he thinks about Mr. Hartford, his father, the more he realizes his father loves Power Ranger and has always wanted to form his own. Moltor has decided to use all these years to plan and grow stronger, to play the devil to fulfill Mr. Hartford's Ranger desire to raise his own team. Moltor believes in time, Mr. Hartford will be tired of the DER and he needs a new challenge, or his obsessive personality would have driven him insane by trying to find another way to revive his wife and mother, possibly becoming the next antagonist of the new set of Power Rangers. Moltor's action although seems like the ultimate betrayal, but his action is out of sincerity. The villains like Camdor and Flores combined would not stand a chance against Mr. Hartford and his Rangers. Also, Moltor has a soft spot for Flores somehow. Moltor fears Mr. Hartford would soon be twisted by his own genius and depression after they are defeated. Moltor decides to become the villain to be the Moby Dick for his Ahab, a Morority to his Holmes, the yin to his yang. Mr. Hartford asks Moltor to release Mac, but unfortunately Moltor is unable to do so, since it is Thrax who merged the two together. Mr. Hartford asks Moltor to come home, fight by his side. This isn't a game. Moltor refuses, fearing his return to the good would imbalance the Morphin Grid, making the Rangers powerless. Mr. Hartford says the Overdrive team are no longer Power Rangers. Moltor gave him a suggestion to look into existing Ranger powers. This leads Mr. Hartford to look into his own Sentinel Knight powers and see if he could find the past Rangers for help. Returning to base, Mr. Hartford asks Spencer to see if he could use any information to help them, but since Hartford's mansion is tied to the morphing grid, there are no powers. Mr. Hartford uses his own Sentinel Knight energy to power the house temporarily. Thrax's forces arrive to challenge the Rangers. The Rangers in civilian form face off against the monsters, but with their civilian form, they're no match. Then Thrax gives them another taste of an energy blast, taking them all out. When the Rangers were taken out, Thrax ordered the Rangers to be rounded up and captured. While the Rangers were captured, Thrax augmented Mr. Hartford's device that downloads information directly into the Rangers' minds into mind control gadgets. They are now all his mindless minions. Immoral Drive, Execute. Similar to Tommy's Evil Ranger arc, the Rangers proved to be a tough challenge against Mr. Hartford for a few episodes. Mr. Hartford, as a Sentinel Knight, tried over and over again to stop the Rangers from allowing Thrax to absorb more Karo energies from each storage, but his attempts were futile. Fortunately, in time, Sprinter finds the veteran Rangers and they conjure up a rescue mission. Looking at the augmented mind control code, Adam was able to figure out the mind control tech, which is similar to the Machine Empire, as it once had manipulated Tommy. Bridge believes that code can be of good use. As a side note, Bridge has been promoted to SPD Red Ranger. Mr. Hartford traced their Overdrive tracker's signal to one of the warehouses. The veteran Rangers arrived here to fight the Chillers. They all fought in civilian forms, which was completely awesome. But Thrax and his gang then come out to declare his new evil Overdrive Rangers. Thrax will act as the mentor and use the Overdrive Rangers to protect worlds while offering criminals weapons, mocking the legacy of power. Mr. Hartford asks Thrax why isn't he joining in the fight rather than letting others do his dirty work. Thrax laughs and says he wants to enjoy seeing Mr. Hartford and his veteran Rangers in despair at being defeated by the newest team. The veteran fights the Overdrive Rangers and the boss villains. The mind-controlled Overdrive Rangers are tougher to handle. Overdrive Black and Moltor have a showdown against SPD Red Bridge. Moltor and Overdrive Black keep on fighting against Bridge up close, which makes his Delta Blaster long-range attacks ineffective. Bridge was taken down by the two. Overdrive Blue and Meritrix teams up against Ninja Storm Blue Tori. Tori tries to use her water attack against the two ninja opponents, but Meritrix uses the Ninja Megazord powers to easily dodge the water blasts. Dax uses his Drive Vortex, which sends the powerful water blast back at Tori, knocking her out. Furious and Overdrive Pink double teams on Mystic Force Queen Xander with him using the Sentinel Sword. Xander tries to use his magic, but Furious easily cancels out his vine attacks with her ice, dubbing with that, "Winter is when plants die." Furious freezes him and takes the Sentinel Sword off his hand, and she magically separated Mr. Hartford from the sword. With Mr. Hartford separated and powerless, she blasts him with the cryogenic beam and shatters the frozen mentor. Overdrive Pink uses her Drive Geyser, which overpowered Xander's magic shield. With the two combined strengths of magic and technology, the two break down Xander's defenses, besting Xander. Fearcats and Overdrive Yellow gang up on Dino Thunder Yellow Kira. Fearcats and Overdrive Yellow uses brute force against Kira, which her nimbleness is ineffective against them. With the final blow to Kira's head with the Drive Claws, Kira is bested by them. Moltor and Overdrive Mercury face off with Turbo Green Adam. Overdrive Mercury uses his liquid powers, which catches up to Adam's speed, slamming him off his feet. Moltor uses an energy blast on Adam, which he demorphs. Moltor is surprised how weak Adam was. The veteran Rangers all fell, defeated. Thrax tells the boss villains of the season to step back and allow the Overdrive team to do the honors. Moltor tries to stop Thrax. While Moltor was fighting Tyzon earlier, it made him think about how Mac has turned Tyzon to Mr. Hartford's side. Secretly reflecting what he has done was because of an inferiority complex and abandonment issues. This won't win his dad over, nor is that what he truly wants. Thrax ignores Moltor. The Overdrive team steps forward and prepares the Drill Blaster to destroy the veterans. Moltor jumps in front of the veterans, hoping to shield them. Before they knew it, the Overdrive team turns around and blasts Thrax and his minions instead. Shocked, Thrax demands to know what happened. The defeated veteran Rangers on the ground slowly vanishes. The entire time the Overdrive team and the monsters were fighting against illusions, created by Xander. Xander tells Furious, even though it's winter, I am evergreen. Unlike Adam, no offense. All the veterans were unharmed, waiting for Bridge's response from the SPD Mercurian branch. Bridge has sent the mind control codes to them, and they were waiting for a virus to nullify the mind control frequency. The illusion of fighting against the veteran Rangers are to buy time and analyze each boss villain's powers. Once they have collected enough data and the virus was retrieved, Bridge was cancelled the mind control device, waking the Rangers up. Seeing how his mind control no longer works, Thrax quickly reabsorbs all the morphing grid energies. The other Rangers still chose to fight up against evil despite having their Ranger powers taken away again. This struck a chord with Moltor. Before Thrax could destroy him, Adam uses his ninjutsu smokescreen and helps the crew escape. Thrax claims he will find actual evil teenagers who are willing to do evil by his side. Powerless Rangers. Returning back to base, the Rangers need to find a way to fight. Mr. Harford believes he can use his Sentinel Knight powers as fuel for the Ranger powers. Xander and Rose help them out. Adam tries to use Alpha to connect the morphing grid energies, with Kira and Ronnie trying to see if they can power up the morphing grid with Kira's Dino Gem. Tyzone and Bridge also try to see if he could ask the Mercuria to borrow some energy to charge Overdrive swords. Tori was sent out with Dax and Will to spy on Thrax and his crew to see what they're up to. Moltor spots them and helps the Rangers hide in the shadows. Later, he approaches them in secret, but he is not interested in fighting. He can't go through with Thrax's plans anymore. Bring Moltor back to base, they discuss their next move. Things seem dire since the Overdrive Rangers are powerless again, and the veteran Rangers are not strong enough to help them. Dax asks if they should bring more veterans to fight. Adam says Thrax and the Carolites' powers are derived from the residue morphing grid energies. If they have more than 5 veteran Rangers, that might end up giving the Carolites more excess energy, making them even more powerful. If the Overdrive team morphs, it cancels this effect out too, but since the Overdrive morphers are out of commission, if the 5 veterans face off with them, their powers will be absorbed by the villains. Mr. Harford still has Max Morpher, which he will take into battle in honor for his fallen son. Moltor tells him his son is not gone, he has returned. Even though they are able to rewrite the Sentinel as the battery, Mr. Harford is currently not strong enough to power 5 morphers at the same time. He could barely create enough powers for 1.5 Rangers. That night, Moltor sneaks out and is confronted by Mr. Harford and Spencer. Then the scene cuts to an end. Blazing Betrayal. The next day, Moltor returns back to the villain's lair and tells Thrax he has duped the Overdrive team. Confronting his father for the last time, he stole the Sentinel sword back and brought Mr. Harford as a prisoner of war. He was able to separate his father from the Sentinel Knight form. Thrax was more than happy to have the final relic to be on his side. Fluris demands to wield the Sentinel sword, but Moltor refutes, stating the sword only belongs to Thrax, and he is only Thrax's sword carrier. Thrax delightfully agrees and tells Fluris to know her place, even she gave birth to Moltor. What does that even mean? The final battle occurred in Angel Grove, where Thrax, with all the residue powers, is planning to create a command center and become the foe Sordon. The Overdrive Rangers show up to rescue Mr. Harford from Thrax and his minions. Dax calls Moltor a traitorous monster. Thrax mocks the Rangers for being powerless. Thrax said Mr. Harford is so pitiful, he wants a family so bad he have a robot as a son and a bunch of strangers in his home. Is Mr. Harford that pathetic because his son and wife are lost by his hobby? Throughout the season, all Rangers were completely reliant on their powers. Due to the lack of civilian powers and this season's villains are drenched in morphing grid energies, it's hard to fight them in civilian mode. In the past, there were moments where Rangers cannot deal with enemies without their powers, needing to morph in every time. However, as the season progresses, the Rangers learn more to be Rangers without Ranger suits. Even though Thrax has stripped them of their powers, they refuse to give up and still choose to be Rangers. They do an out-of-suit roll call. Before Thrax knew it, Bridge appears from behind the villains and throws small bombs at them as diversion. That was the cue. Moltor stabs Thrax in the back with the Sentinel sword, which drains the majority of their energy within him. Adam appears from the ground with his ninjutsu ability, grabs Mr. Harford, throws him up in the air. Tori dives and brings Mr. Harford to the Overdrive Rangers. Before the other villains could retrieve Mr. Harford, Fluris blasts the heroes with an ice attack. Kira dives in and uses her Sonic Screech, which shattered Fluris' ice attack. Then Xander uses his own magical vines to hold the villains down. Moltor then throws the sword back at the Rangers, and Will catches it. Dax then yells, "Moltor, I knew you were good from the start." Angered, Thrax blasted his Z-Staff at Moltor, but rather than destroying him, Moltor was split into 2, Mac in the monster form. Mr. Harford's son runs back to the Rangers, while Moltor remains behind. Now this Molter is just a husk of a shell, mindless energy residue powers. The team welcomes Mac back. The Sentinel sword morphs into Mr. Hartford. Two Mr. Andrew Hartfords. Turns out Mr. Hartford, the Rangers rescued, is Spencer in disguise. Mr. Hartford instructs all the Rangers to put their morphers on his hands. With all the energy taken from Thrax within the Sentinel sword, Mr. Hartford powers up the morphers. With this as the new source of the Overdrive Rangers powers, Xander then places a mystical morphin grid firewall which prevents Thrax from stealing all those residue energy powers back. Showdown with the veterans. With the Rangers morphers restored, Mr. Hartford passes his son the Red Overdrive morpher. All the Rangers morph together. Black Mighty Morphin Power Rangers battles Thrax with a Sentinel sword. Red SPD and Red Operation Overdrive Power Ranger battles Fluris. Green Mystic Force, Black Operation Overdrive, and Blue Operation Overdrive Rangers battle the Fear Cats. Yellow Dino Thunder and Yellow Operation Overdrive Rangers battle Miratrix and Camdor. Mercury Ranger, Blue Ninja Storm, and Pink Operation Overdrive battles Moltor. After Fluris was already at her weakest state, she was further exhausted by SPD Red and Overdrive Red. While SPD Red has been on the defense and Fluris was on the offense, Overdrive Red has been absorbing her chiral energy. Green Mystic Force steps in and uses his magic to nullify Fluris' monster form. Fluris reverts back to her human self. Taking a leaf out of the first Mystic Force episode, Mystic Force Green demorphs into Xander and tries to talk through to her. The woman who was Fluris says she doesn't want to be evil and was horrified by what the Korog and Mystic White Ranger residue powers had made her do. She said that Thrax's evil energy, while he was disguised as Norg, was what made her do awful things. Xander and Max say they believe her and ask her to hide away as Spencer rushes into the battlefield to take her back to safety. Mac turns back and have a better look at her and thought for a bit, then shook his head. After Meritrix and Camdor are weakened, SPD Red then jumps in. Since they are within the jurisdiction of the Interplanetary Law Enforcement Agency, SPD Red uses the Delta Morpher to judge the two criminals. In the judgment mode, after the two are found guilty, Meritrix and Camdor are trapped inside the containment cards. Mercury Rangers offers Moltor and the Fear Cats a chance to surrender. They refuse and want to die fighting. Thus, when the trio were incapacitated, Mercury Ranger uses his morpher to drain all the morphing grid energies. With the energies taken into the Mercury Ranger, Moltor disappears and the Fear Cats are reverted back to normal. Mercury Ranger offered them a chance to surrender again, and they did. They said they never wanted to harm anyone, and it was all Thrax's mind control. Bridge comes in and verified what they said were true from his device. Tyzon forgives them and tells the Fear Cats to get somewhere safe from this battlefield. This ends Tyzon's full arc from hunting the Fear Cats to redeeming them. Next, Thrax uses an energy blast which knocks a Sentinel Knight and Overdrive Red Ranger off their feet. Adam runs in and uses the Defender Fest. He knocks Thrax onto the ground. Father and son jumps back into the fight. The Sentinel sword becomes sword mode, and with the excess energy he has absorbed, he merges together with the sun. Together, they became the Red Sentinel Ranger. Mr. Hartford and his son easily dispose of Thrax after a brief battle. The Rangers, Sentinel Knight, and the remaining Evil Alliance face each other. The Rangers and the Sentinel Knight fired at Thrax. As the Evil Alliance is no more, Thrax uses his last breath and creates giant corrupted Megazords to battle the Rangers. Crash and burn. As Thrax crumbles into dust, a few corrupted Megazords of the first Dino Megazord, Thunder Megazord, Shogun Megazord, Ninja Megazord, and Titan Megazord were formed by Thrax's remnant energies. The Overdrive Rangers called upon all their Zords, and the Sentinel Knight transformed into a giant size to battle these corrupted Megazords. However, they were no match against them. Thrax's residue of evil has the upper hand. The Sentinel Knight was slammed onto the ground and the Drive Max Megazord lost its right arm, losing its main weapon. Spencer tries to help and sends in the Auxiliary Zords to prevent the evil Megazords from harming his team. It feels hopeless. Each of their Auxiliary Zords are destroyed. As the Dino Megazord raises its blade to finish the Rangers, all the Rangers close their eyes and wait for their fate. Without warning, the Megazord was blasted by laser bolts. Rushing in from the sky was the Delta Runner 1. The other evil Megazords were ambushed too by the Ninja Storm Dolphin Zord, Black Shogun Zord, Mystic Minotaur, and Yellow Pterazord. The Dolphin Zord becomes the new right arm for the Drive Max Megazord. The Pterazord folds into a boomerang, becoming a weapon for the Drive Max Megazord. The Sentinel Knight transforms into sword mode for the Mystic Minotaur to wield. Black Shogun Sword jumps onto Delta Runner, using it like a hoverboard. The Overdrive team, alongside the veteran Rangers in the cockpit with them, launches a counterattack. After a long and challenging giant sword fight, the Rangers finally won, destroying the corrupted Megazords. Black Mighty Morphin Power Ranger tells the Overdrive team this is what Ranger power is all about. They shake hands. The woman that came out of Flurries runs and thanks the Rangers, hugs Overdrive Red. She said she will now look for her husband and son. The Sentinel Knight was stunned and demorphs. The woman gasped and the two embraced each other. The Rangers were confused. Overdrive Red remorphs and his eyes widen. He asks, "Mom?" Mr. Hartford turns to the Rangers and says, "Team, meet Mrs. Hartford. She is my wife." Yes, so Mrs. Hartford never died, but was actually transformed into a Karo ice monster after the accident all the way back, just like Moltor. When Mrs. Hartford was young, she was from Briar Wood and she found a piece of the Mystic Force White Karo snowflake and turned it into her necklace. The Karo energy remained dormant, but when it was in contact with Thrax all those years ago, it sent her to the past during the battle between the mystical deities which trapped her in the underworld and corrupted her into Flurious. After a long time, her appearance has been frozen, remaining the same after so many years. Overdrive, Outward Bound. Everyone is gathered inside the Hartford mansion, including all the veterans, Mr. Hartford and Spencer. Dax tells Tori, Xander, Bridge, Adam, and Kira that at first he was happy to see them, then upset that they fought, and now sad that they're leaving. Spencer walks out in a tray full of buttery toast for Bridge. Tori tells them if they ever need them again, just to give them a call, and passes her card to Mr. Hartford. Even though her main job is to spy on evil as a ninja, her side job is selling surfboards. She is also planning to join Adam on his ninja quest to discover more about the ninjutsu coins. Kira is a musician now. Xander is an ambassador for non-magical beings and magical beings to live in harmony. Mrs. Hartford, former florist, shows interest in helping out the magical community to make amends for what she has done, despite being mind-controlled. The Fear Cats try to make amends with Taizon. They miss their family as they have been taken from their tribe for over 10 years. They wanted to visit their home for so long, and Taizon offered to bring them home. Mac says his heart is racing like crazy. To everyone's surprise, including his own, Robot Mac has been transformed into human. When Thrax merged Moltor and Mac together, then separated the two, Mr. Hartford's son in Moltor was transferred to Mac. The android Mac and Mr. Hartford's son is merged into one entity, converted into human. Everyone is in an upbeat mood. Mr. Hartford suggests they gather together. Everyone forms a circle and plants their hands on top of each other. Then they leap into the air and cheer for Power Rangers. With the excess energies of the Morphing Grid gone, the Morphing Grid has been disabled until the next villain appears. Morphing Grid acts as a counterbalance when there is good and evil. Thus, even though the veteran Ranger powers are gone, which they are fine with since evil is also no more, Mr. Hartford and Bridge went onto the DER and Overdrive history and deleted anything related to Thrax. Otherwise, it might alter the future. DER has also picked up a contract with Nasada and SPD to do damage control on other planets that also have their own Power Rangers and uses the Morphing Grid. There are hints that Mr. Hartford later collaborated in forming the SPD Earth branch. Overdrive sets controls to outer space now, flying higher than before. Operation Outward Bound. They will do excavation of alien Power Ranger relics for the newly established intergalactic DER. Also, Mr. Hartford and Mac need time to catch up on father and son bonding. Thank you everyone for watching How to Fix Operation Overdrive. I appreciate all your support for this entire series. It has been a fun ride. How would you have written the Once a Ranger story? What did you think about this series? Please comment below, give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe. More will be coming.